was 18 and the hormones were running, a senior in high school and a propensity for fun, I took on a job at the city pharmacy, delivering drugs very legitimately. It meant lots of driving, lots of knocking on doors, lots of tips for the effort, lots of characters, lots of horrors. Like Betsy the Wolf, when I, like a sheep, would follow her tracks to where she would sleep, and give her the pills to exchange for some bills, while in the background, her John would pace round. Did I say pace? It was more like a crawl, because though she was service, were not young at all. For Betsy, age 30, had cornered the market on older, rich widowers, a lucrative target. But in that brief glimpse, I could see in his eye that bright kind of light you have, young and spry, with memories that were dying and bodily functions as well. Those moments with Betsy were heaven, I could tell. I turned and left her in her nightie so thin, so she wouldn't notice the sweat on my skin. And I wonder if Betsy in her job as call girl was really as bad as the names they would hurl. My next stop, Gray House, a beautiful place, the kind of old mansion dressed with curtains of lace. But this was no home of industry wealth, just one for wayward girls needing of stealth. Runaways, stowaways, teens of no repeat, trying to change their lives, most quite astute. Some were so ravishing, others were not. But given my motives, I had low standards of hot. I would elbow my way. I would drop off the pills, birth control, I suspect, by judging from the male suitors, all on the front steps. I would elbow my way through the crowds of these boys, hoping against hope that the deflowered were poised for another time in their arms before the next baby, knowing when asked for commitment, the boys would say, maybe. And for little young me, as naive as I was, the girls would look and hardly give pause. I, on the other hand, would often wonder why, with morals as loose, they wouldn't say hi. Oh, if they had, all the wonders of pleasure, of which by that age I still could not measure. But all in the end, regardless of fantasy, my trip to Gray House would end very hastily. With a huff and a puff, I'd drop off the meds and ask for a signature to placate the feds, and walk out the door past the sweet sounds of vixens and sirens and more, knowing with these, today I'd not score, because I had deliveries, 2 more to be sure. Down past Maine and State and left turn on a coin was my next stop of love while cooling my loin. And in this small building, an apartment I'd find, the name on the door, it was Harriet kind. For Harriet was old, a grandmotherly age, and when she opened the door, I'd see page after page after page after page after page. She was a studious type, a former editor in role, with an old pair of spectacles poised carefully on her mole. At first she seemed quiet and not warmly at all. After that picture, she wasn't that tall. But here books, they didn't matter, 3 to 4 tall stacks deep, from floor to the ceiling, against every wall steeped. In the baths, in the bed, in the kitchen books were, and as I stood silently, I would hear a purr, or 2, or 3, or more, and out of the crannies in pure disbelief, out of the forest of cover and sheath, out of each page each manuscript thick, like rabbits from hats. In an old circus trick emerged cats and kittens and more, believe me. I quickly lost count on how many I could see. Then the olfactory senses took over. The stench of the litter, not the sweet smell of clover. For Harriet kind lived in a library of her own, with critters as guests, so not very alone. And oh, she loved her books, and oh, she loved her cats. I soon sat down and listened, and gave them all their sweet pats. Having been there before, I knew the routine. A story or two of routine, a discussion of literature, author, and plot, for I knew that Harriet liked that a lot. So this poor lonely woman, with her cats and her books, was looking for love in all of her nooks. She never went out. She always stayed in. She relied on her walker and a bottle of gin. Through her newspaper characters or novels protagonists, old Harriet Kind just wanted to talk and to share and to connect in a way that said loneliest. And years later, I heard that this lover of lit was found with her felines in her library pit, quite still and quite stiff, because no one quite knew. She'd been dead for 3 weeks, but her cats lived on stew. That day of my visit, she was very alive and actually amusing in her little hive. And my delivery, which only minutes should take, would often be hours, all for her sake. The human condition is sad, some have said, but here was a woman who, always well-read, could make being a recluse go right to your head. But alas, all my visits would lead to an end, and leaving poor Harriet never to see her again, I left down the hall to my next love appointment and drove down the street to give Grandma her ointment. My deliveries included drugs, balms of all sorts, and for many the ultimate was liquid, of course. Grandma Hodie was one of those hard-drinking ladies. She first would take Seagrams, and then she'd give Hades. For the grandma was no ordinary crone. At 90+ years, always watching alone. What you looking at, Grandma? I would often say, as she looked out the window day after day.
Look at those whores strutting their stuff. If they knew what they were doing, they might make enough. I'd a good mind to go down and give them some lessons. After all, in my day, I was good at those sessions. I sit here and watch them, day after day. One thing's for sure, those bitches can't play.
Apparently, she gave no mind to my age. Actually gave me a look like I could be a sage. With a mouth like a sailor, Grandma Hodie looked paler than the girl she was watching between sniffs of inhaler. You see, Grandma, it seems, was in Europe during the war. She said that she spied on the Nazis and more. She said she was beautiful and she could get them to fall. In bed, they'd be dutiful, and they would always tell all. The Germans, the French, the Brits, and the Yanks didn't matter to her. And they'd end with their thanks. She was good at giving her feelings and her body without making it seem that it all was too shoddy. And in the process, she became very good at her game, good enough to critique those as they walked by her pain.
Look at how she struts. And look at her dress. These babes have no class and not a bit of finesse. I knew how to woo, how to flutter my eyes. I knew how to get them between my two thighs. And you, my young friend, you innocent child, I could teach you a thing or two and be wild.
Wetting my pants was an option that day. But no less than cringing and looking away. May and December would never take place, but still she did capture in my heart a space. When I started to leave, she took me by hand. She started to dance like there was a band. She sang me a song as if I were her lad, to whom she would love, for secrets I had. And then we both danced, she sprouting some tears, remembering her time now gone many years. So the lesson I learned from those long ago days was that love can appear in strange and odd ways. So don't take love for granted, it's always quite near. Happy Valentine's Day today and throughout the whole year.